Okay, good morning to you once again. This is going to be an introductory lecture to the field of human resource management. And this is the course outline that we will be using for the day. By the end of this lecture, it is expected that students will be introduced to the historical milestones that has led to or shaped the field of human resource management. Students will also be introduced to the scope of HRM, essentially all the activities that fall within the purview of HRM. Then a comparison will be made between personnel management and HRM. This is because HRM evolved from personnel management, and it was an attempt to address some of the inadequacies of personnel management. We will then move on to the objectives that HRM seeks to achieve, the importance of HRM, and finally, the challenges that confronts the field of human resource management. A number of definitions have been advanced to explain what human resource management is. And according to Armstrong, in fact, that is the text that I have recommended that you consult frequently. He defines it as a strategic and coherent approach to the management of organizations' most valued assets. And when he construes employees as an organization's most valued assets, he is essentially referring to the people who work in there assiduously to convert other factors of production to achieve an organization's objective. Now, when Armstrong also says HRM embodies a strategic activity or a strategic approach, it means that whatever the HR departments, and if you extend it to the organization, whatever they intend to achieve in the long run or in the long term, they take series of activities and plan towards it now, so that by the time you get to this futuristic self, you will be ready to hit the ground running. And another component of his definition is that these activities are conducted in a coherent manner. And the coherency means that you can't be doing things haphazardly. So for instance, if there is no need for new employees in the organization, you can't be conducting recruitment and selection. Other than that, you will end up giving people contracts and they will become a financial burden to the company, even though they may not be having a job to perform. So in that regard, you'll be having a lot of hands chasing few jobs, and that is not a right thing to pursue. So it means that even in the conduct of HR activities, it has to be done coherently. So recruitment and selection, as and when it is needed, it must be planned in sync with training and development, so that immediately you get fresh blood into the organization, you can conduct orientation for them and start giving them the requisite training on the job, so that such workforce can hit the ground running. In the same vein, you should be concerned about their performance-related outcomes. So at the beginning of assigning them their contracts, you have to give them their key performance index, so that maybe after 6 months or at the end of the year, those index will become the benchmark you can use to appraise them. So a lot of thinking must go into all these activities, and they have to be done coherently. Okay. The same can be said about the compensation or reward management that will be given to them. You can't go in for new recruits when you do not have the financial muscle to contain them. So the compensation and benefit administration, usually through the accounting and finance advice, must also be available so that you can do all these things in sync. Okay, and that is the reasoning of Armstrong as far as human resource management is concerned. Patricia or anyone, mute your microphone. Now, beyond Armstrong, you can also consult the book by Dessler, which you can come across other equally interesting definitions, the book by Torrenty. Another definition that has also been submitted to explain what HRM is that it can be defined as the process of employing people, training them, compensating them, developing policies relating to them, and developing strategies to retain them. Now, if you compare this second definition, which is coming from Torrington, to that of Armstrong, it's quite straightforward. It tries to explain HRM by linking it to the various functions that the department performs. So essentially, it's saying that it involves employing people, which is staffing or recruitment and selection. Then it also involves training them, because after recruitment and selection, you need to indoctrinate your workforce for them to be in line with the organizational culture and the ways of doing things. In the same vein, the current job increments that have been in the world of work for some time also need to be fine-tuned from time to time. So these refresher courses all fall under the purview of training. Now, Torrington is also saying you need to compensate them. And this is true because the employees are working assiduously to make sure the organization becomes successful in terms of the attainment of its objectives. And so in return, it is expected that you reward them financially and non-financially through some forms of recognition or maybe praise. There is also the need for you to deploy policies that relate to them. So there could be a policy on leave, a policy on attendance, a policy on sexual harassment, discrimination at the workplace, and so on and so forth. So the second definition candidly tries to explain what HRM is by linking it to the various functions that the department performs. Okay. So essentially, all these activities affect staff from the moment they contact the organization in response to an advertisement through the time that they will leave the organization. In the ABA, you saw in the newspaper that GCTU is looking for people to work as front desk advisors. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So those of you that are giving me feedback that you cannot hear, don't worry. I am recording, so once I am done, you will get access to the entire video, okay? All right. You can also position yourself well so that maybe it is coming from your end rather than my end. So HRM is about enabling staff to use their qualities in order to fulfill their role and contribute to organization's mission and purpose. Now, the nature of HRM. Good human resource management is essential if any organization can be designated as an employer of choice, which can equally attract and retain talented employees. What I'm trying to say is that for every organization to be characterized as an employer of choice, where good practices maintain, it is necessary that they have in place an HR department that will also work assiduously to improve the welfare and well-being of the workforce, so that by being an organization of choice, it can attract and what? Retain good staff. Now, research also indicates that human resource management is essential for an organization to achieve its objectives and also attain competitive advantage. And this is particularly important because organizations do not operate in a vacuum or on an island. Rather, they engage in cutting-through competition with their rivals. And so if at any point in time you want to have employees with the right knowledge, skills, and abilities, particularly those with distinctive capabilities, that can help your company have an edge over your rivals, then it is imperative that you have HRM activities being carried out in your organization. And that will also help to attract and retain your hardworking staff. Now, let's quickly look at the historical milestones that have led to the field of HR. And this is not a history class, so we are not going to go deeper into it, but there are certain lessons that can be drawn from history to explain why HR is practiced the way we do, or why most organizations aspire to have best HR practices in place. Research indicates that between 2000 and 1500 BC, there were documentations to demonstrate that some form of management of employees' activities or practices were carried out. So if you interrogate the Egyptian hieroglyphics, there are indications that even before Christ was born, there were some practices that were in place to manage employees and also get the best out of them. And in fact, the Chinese also have some documentation which predates the birth of Christ, that around that time, before an individual is given an opportunity to perform a task, they carried out some form of screening. Now, the lesson that can be drawn from this is that recruitment and screening of employees is nothing new, but it is something that has been done differently throughout history. Research also indicates that around the early 1700s to 1800s, the Great Britain experienced rapid industrialization. And in fact, US also evolved from an agrarian nation into an industrial nation. Now, these transformations that was occurring in US and Great Britain meant that issues about how you manage an agrarian society to achieve your targets needs to be done differently when you are also carrying it in an industrial nation, because working in an industry means that you needed some formal system in place to regulate the way you operate. Unlike in the agricultural sector, particularly around that time where it was more or less like family business where things can be done anyhow. Now, this was also affected by some migration issues. Because of the news that there were a lot of opportunities for people to work in industries, people started migrating from, for instance, US to UK to work over there. And others also started migrating from some parts of Europe to work in the industries that were being set up. So this required the creation of a labor system. And by creating labor system, it meant that there should be some form of division of labor where individuals will be responsible for a particular role or task at one point in time. And this labor system was also cardinally required to manage the industries that were set up, as well as improve the welfare of the employees. This indicates that issues about improving employee welfare is nothing new. Now, it became an issue around the 1800s because they were all experimenting with how industries can work. And different people had different philosophies about how you can actually get the best out of your industry. Some even thought that if you take Frederick Tyler, he was actually trained as an engineer. And so he was expecting humans to work like machines. So anytime you complain that you are sick and you may not be able to make it up to work, his payment system meant that for being sick, you are not going to be paid. And they didn't also, because they had targets to achieve at any point in time, in terms of the production of their goods and services, it meant that tolerating such complaints will truncate your initiative of meeting your objectives. So there were a lot of inhumane treatment that was meted out to employees during the industrialization system. And this, the HR came as a way of bringing humane treatment to employees. Now, between the 1790s and 1820s, research also indicates that labor unions were now established to protect employees' rights. And this is particularly important because the sort of management systems that was created out of the Industrial Revolution were always subservient to the management and the interest of the company at the peril of employees. So unions, the inception of unions was necessitated to come as a valve to what? Protect the rights of employees. And it is because of some of these agitations that we now have vibrant unions in all aspects of employment relationship today. Officially, in 1900, B.F. Goodrich Company established the first HR department. And this indicates that prior to his creation of an HR department, HR was being treated, or it was being practiced informally by some people that were not trained as HR specialists. And this is not surprising because today, most companies do not even have an HR department. What they do is that they get the manager to multitask as not only the managing director, but as the operation director, HR, sometimes finance issues, the same manager will be doing it. And you cannot be a jack of all trades. So B.F. Goodrich Company is credited for being the first establishment to have the creation of HR department. And B.F. Goodrich, they were into the production, the conversion of rubber into ties and other outputs. I think these days, some of their ties are still in market, but it's in limited supply. Around the 1902, the National Cash Register also established an HR department to deal with employee issues. And this means that prior to this, there wasn't any Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
This means that prior to the National Cash Register's establishment of an HR department, it was only B.F. Goodrich Company that was doing this. So most public and private enterprises were doing things, were practicing HR and personnel management their own way. And the National Cash Register drew lessons from B.F. Goodrich Company, and they also formalized the departments. Now, earlier on, I made mention of Frederick W. Tyler. So around the 1911, Frederick Tyler was also noted for commissioning what he calls scientific management principles. Scientific management principles. And what this scientific management principles means is that if you look at how machines are deliberately structured and calibrated or designed to perform routinely, the same ideology can be brought to the world of work for people to work just as that of machines. So which meant that if you pick, for instance, a car, it has several components, and each of these components perform a specific task. So if you replicate such an ideology at the world of work, then it is expected that every employee in an organization can also be given a specific task. And all these tasks can be harnessed like a system to function at once. Closely akin to this scientific management principle is the use of differential pay system, which is also credited to Frederick Tyler. And the differential pay system means that we need to pay people according to their contribution to organizational success. So that if, for instance, you are working in a company where you are working in a bottling company, so at the end of the day, if you are able to bottle 10 boxes of water, then you'll be paid according to these boxes. If you pack only one box and fill it with water, then you'll be paid with only that. Now, a major criticism that was leveled against this differential pay system, particularly which was used around the Industrial Revolution, was that it did not accord recognition to people that were sick. Don't forget, we are paying you according to your output. So if you are sick and you do not turn up for work today, then it means that you don't get paid. In the same vein, if the organization, for one reason or the other, is not able to organize the resources that can also help you achieve your outputs, then it means that that particular whole day, no one is going to be paid. But aside this, it was a system that incentivized people to go over and above their efforts to produce more, so that the more you produce, the more you earn. If you produce less, then you also earn less. So that is the scientific management system and differential pay system from Frederick Tyler. Then 1913, U.S. Department of Labor was also established to promote employee welfare. So I would say we have the tripartite committee where anytime there are labor disputes, the Employers Association, Employees Association, and the Labor Commission come together to find an amicable solution to it. The initial one was created in 1913 by the US Labor Department. And because of the enviable strides results that they were achieving in terms of improving the welfare of employees and incentivizing them to work harder, this ideology was replicated across the globe. Now, between 1920 and 1930, the revelation by the Hawthorne studies also brought some lessons that can now be implemented not only in the field of HRM, but even in the practice of management. Now, the Hawthorne studies was conducted by Elton Mayo, and he is actually a psychologist that was contracted by the General Electric Company to provide answers to why, despite the caliber of employees, in terms of the quality of employees they were having at that point in time and resources, they were still having challenges meeting their targets. Now, key finding of the study, that is the Hawthorne study, was that increasing productivity, you can actually increase productivity by changing the physical environment of employees. In other words, if you pay employees very well, if you give them all the requisite resources, but the environment within which they are working is not conducive, then their level of morale may also be affected, and this can inadvertently affect productivity. Another key finding of the Hawthorne study was that you can actually motivate employees to get the best out of them, not only through financial rewards, but sometimes through how you relate to them. So that paved the way for what we now call employee relations. Sometimes by just mere recognition of their efforts or giving them citation for their contribution in a given success can go a long way to moralize them, and also it can help onlookers to draw lessons from it. So that is the Hawthorne studies by Elton Mayo. In 1935, the Social Security System, the Social Security Act was also passed, which created old age insurance for those that are retiring or nearing retiring. So through payroll taxes, employees would then contribute a portion of their aid towards their retirement, while their employers also contribute a portion. Now, prior to these dates, there wasn't any form of social security system. So when you go on retirement and you have not planned towards it yourself, then it means you were going home empty-handed. In 1938, the Fair Labor Act was also passed. And this meant that there was the need for laws and regulations on minimum wage to be established so that you can know the floor from which, and I said the minimum amount of wages or salary that one is expected to receive. And below that, it will be illegal to be paying employees on that particular target. 1960 to 1980, a number of acts which tries to improve the welfare of employees were established. For instance, Equal Pay Act of 1963 was established to ensure that irrespective of your gender, your ethnicity, your race, or your sexual orientation, if two people are placed at the same position, then we expect them to receive the same salary. Okay. And prior to this, there was a lot of discrimination that was going on. And so if you are not in the good books of your employer, and by mere looking at maybe your ethnicity, they may decide to pay you something lesser than what you were actually qualified to receive. A lot of civil rights movements also cropped up around that era, which led to the establishment of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Then, in terms of creating a healthy and safe working environment, the Occupational Health and Safety Act of 1970 was passed, which has now been adopted and modified across the globe. Another act which also cropped up between the 60s to 80s was the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1970. And prior to this, most companies were turning down application of pregnant people, particularly because they did not want to incur some of the inadequacies that surrounds pregnancy. So they wanted people, in fact, some companies had clauses that once you are employed, you were bonded for some time before you can actually get pregnant. And so the passage of this act meant that if a qualified pregnant woman applies for a position and you screen all of them and that person emerges as the best candidate, you are expected to give them the nod to work. Other than that, your company can be sued and the damages that will follow cannot be overemphasized. Then the Disability Act of 1990 was also established. This meant that disabled persons were discriminated against whenever they are employed for certain jobs that, despite their disability, they are in a position to perform. So this act means that you are not supposed to discriminate against them, particularly if they have the requisite knowledge, skills, and abilities to excel on a given job. The Older Workers Beneficiary Act of 1990 also prohibited the discrimination against the disabled and workers older than 40 years. Okay, any questions so far? Hello, can you hear me? Frederick Saki.
Yes, sir.
Frederick Saki.
Yes, sir. Sir, can you say the slave trade also has its own HR management?
Come again.
The slave trade in Africa. Can you say it also has its own internal HR management?
Okay, explain it and let me see how I'll contextualize it.
Let's say a particular group of people are selected and then they are transported outside the country to work overseas and then they are taken care of.
The slave trade arrangement was not carried out, if you like, it was actually carried out under compulsion. So most of the individuals that got selected were sold into slavery. So you cannot document it as something which actually informs how we practice HR now. I don't know if you get the analogy I'm trying to make.
Yes, I get it.
Because most of the people that were sold into slavery were against it. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now let's make progress. So personnel management versus HRM. So when the Industrial Revolution materialized and most countries now saw it as an agent of growth, they decided to establish what we call personnel management departments. But these departments can be distinguished from the current HR management that we practice now. And so what are some of the distinctions? In terms of time and span, in terms of time and planning perspective, personnel management was seen as short-term and reactive. In other words, it was ad hoc. Now, the personnel managers were actually addressing the needs of employees as and when it crops up, which meant that, for instance, they will sit down for employees to say they are going on strike before they quickly meet the leaders of the unions to try and address them. And in terms of their time and planning too, their focus was also short-term. So they were always planning for something that can be attained maybe within the first month, about 6 months, and so on and so forth. But if you take HRM, and even deducing from how Armstrong defined it, the time horizon is long-term, and that is why Armstrong said it adopts a strategic approach. It also tends to be proactive, which means that before you are hired into the organization, a lot of thinking and planning goes on, and these come together to become a blueprint or a plan that can be used to manage employees. And it also works in an integrated manner, in the sense that recruitment and selection, training and development, performance management, reward management are all done. Cable. Okay. Neighbor. Good. Now, psychological contracts. So psychological contract is also another team that can be used to differentiate how personnel management is conducted as well as how HR management is conducted. So what is psychological contract? Psychological contract is primarily an unwritten contract that is established between employers and employees, which each party is expected to execute their part of this contract. So a typical example, when you are employed into an organization, one of the things that employees have in their mind implicitly is that they will get a conducive working environment that can help them flourish, okay? Now, employers also implicitly expect that the employee will go over and above whatever is captured in their employment contract to help the organization become successful. And usually during such circumstances, they do not expect employees to be complaining that this is not part of my job, okay? With this explained, personnel management in their adherence to psychological contracts try to use compliance. In other words, they try to use the military way to achieve their part of the contract as far as psychological contract is concerned. And the problem with this is that if you try to use force to achieve an end, in your absence, the individual that is involved may not be willing to do the right thing, okay? So HRM rather tries to use commitment. And how do you achieve commitment? You reason with the employees, and also you try to let them understand why helping the company achieve some specific targets, which may not be captured in their contract, can also go a long way to help their own career ladder. So once they are able to understand this and you are not forcing them, the implication is that even in the absence of specific clauses that demands their activity, they will be willing to do it. And even in the absence of an authority, they will still be willing to work. Control systems. So personnel management tries to use external controls. External controls in the sense that, for instance, when an employee flouts a law in the company and it needs to be handled, instead of carrying out an investigation to understand why those laws were broken, or for instance, if someone is caught sleeping on the job, okay, from the personnel management perspective, an action that can be taken may be an outright sack. Rather, in HRM, an investigation, first of all, needs to be conducted to understand why an individual is sleeping on the job. And the outcome of this investigation will then be a yardstick to help the person, particularly if it is because the number of hours is too much or the person is doing multiple jobs, and that is why he is currently sleeping on a particular job. So that by helping the person, the individual will gain self-control of their actions. Another theme that can be used to do the distinction, employee relations. So employee relations essentially refers to the sort of relationship that exists between employees and their management. And if you look at it extensively, employers and their employees, as well as between employers, employees, and national regulatory bodies. So in Ghana here, you can bring a body like the Labor Commission. So anything that borders on resolving conflicts, disagreement between employees and their management, or an association of employees and association of employers, and where the government must come in, it borders in the realms of employee relations. Now, in terms of applying employee relation perspective, personnel management adopts what we call the pluralist or collectivist or low trust strategy. The pluralist or collectivist or low trust strategy. So what is the pluralist strategy? The pluralistic perspective to employee relations means that within the environment where job is conducted, there are several actors. And some of these actors include the employer, the employees, and governments. Now, the pluralistic perspective continues to argue that all these players in the world of work have a common objective. And to achieve this common objective, they have to collectively work in one accord. So that is the argument of the personnel management. Now, a major drawback that has been leveled against this pluralistic perspective is that it breeds low trust among the various actors of employee relations. Until most employees, they will be suspecting that, in fact, they are always thinking management is not willing to increase their pay simply because they are only concerned about the profit motives of the organization. Now, the employer or management will also be thinking that as for these employees, all they are concerned about is their pay increase, but not the profitability or increasing their production outputs. So the pluralism breeds low trust. And that is something that if you are not able to manage it properly, it can always be leading to conflicts or strikes in a particular community of practice. Now, the field of HRM advocates for the unitarist perspective. The unitarist perspective. I say unitarist, and it comes from the word unity. Unity. The unity means that if you take the various organizations that you are working in, for instance, both management and employees have a common objective to achieve, which is usually what we call the corporate objectives or the strategic objectives. Their mission and vision does not differ. So management share the same vision and mission with that of employees. Now, if this is the case, then HR advocates that both management and employees must breed higher level of trust among each other, because at the end of the day, we are all interested in ensuring the survival of the company. It is not as if the management wants the company to succeed at the peril of employees. And the employees are also not only fixated about their welfare or well-being at the peril of the company's profitization. Every unit or member of the company is interested in seeking the success of the company. So it tries to breed high level of trust among the dealings of both management and employees, so that with that level of understanding that there is unison, the amount of conflict and tensions that usually crop up between the two will be what? Minimal. So that is it as far as employee relations is concerned. Now, preferred structures and systems. Preferred structures and systems. The personnel management as a discipline subscribes to the use of bureaucratic, mechanistic, centralized, and formal defined rules. Don't forget, I initially indicated that this was the management system that was used around the Industrial Revolution era. And around that time too, the military had a lot of control and say in some of these dealings. So when they say sleep, you have to sleep. When they say wake up, you have to wake up. When they say you have to continue working, you have to go on. And so this sort of managing employees informed the thinking that went into the theories and principles that were also developed around that time. So I'm not sure if you have heard the name so far I've mentioned Frederick Tyler. Then there's also Max Weber. Max Weber, the Max is spelled normal M-A-X. And the Weber, he is actually a German. So they pronounce W as Wien. So the Weber is spelled W-E-B-E-R, Max Weber. So because he grew up around that Industrial Revolution era and he was inspired by that military style of managing organizations, it led to his development of the bureaucratic theory. So Max Weber is actually credited for the theory of bureaucracy, which means that every organization that aspires to achieve enviable strides must bring some form of formality into their operations. And this formality means that you can't just wake up from your office and walk straight to the CEO's office. There should be formal reporting lines so that if you have something to communicate to the CEO, it has to be through the line of communication, through your supervisor to the next one, until it gets to the destination where you intend to let it get there. And this also meant that the management of organizations became more centralized. Centralized in the sense that decision-making, particularly in organizations that have several branches and maybe multinational enterprises with several subsidiaries, it meant that decision-making had to be taken at the apex or the strategic component of the organization. So in this case, it will be the headquarters or the head office. And this has its own challenges because this centralization means that sometimes you need quick feedback to take a decision at a branch or at a different subsidiary of a multinational enterprise. But because of the centralized system that you are working with, there will be delay in the communication process. So that is the centralization. So these days, to vary it and make it more efficient, you can be using the decentralized system where things that are not so core to the function of the company can at least be handled at the other branches of the company, whilst the delicate ones are handled at the head offices. And these variations are what we find in the field of HRM. So HRM tend to be organic, evolved, flexible rules. So these days you can even hear of open door policies, where specific policies are crafted and deliberately delivered in such a way that whenever you are confronted with a problem around it, you can walk straight to the office of the HR to be heard. For instance, issues about sexual assault at the office, particularly if it is coming from your boss. You don't have to communicate it through your boss to the HR office and so on and so forth. Then rules. So personnel management tend to operate more as specialists or professionals. But in the field of HRM, it is largely integrated into the survival of the company. And so, whereas people with HR background in terms of maybe a first degree in HR are allowed to work without specialization, they are also, without having a professional certificate from maybe a certified HR body, they are also allowed to, in fact, they are encouraged to certify their practice from some of these professional bodies. So which means that under the personnel management, if you are not a chartered person, you cannot be practicing. But under HRM, you can, particularly at the entry level, you can be given the opportunity, if you have a first degree in HR, to be trained and groomed whilst you also pursue your professional certification. Now, the scope of HRM. So the scope of HRM encompasses all the various activities that come under the umbrella of human resource management. And even though I have touched on some of these things, it is important we refresh our mind what they constitute. So the scope is very, very vast, but depending on the core objective of an organization, some of these activities may be put together, whereas others in some organizations, you can desegregate it to have a fully functional HR department. So it includes all activities starting from manpower planning. Manpower planning simply means human resource planning. So employees leave the organization. And when I say employees leave the organization, it could be through voluntary or involuntary. It could even be a point where they are retiring. So if we say an employee is voluntarily leaving a company, it means that maybe they've gotten a better offer in a competing organization and they've resigned. And involuntary means that they have committed a grievous offense, not for the first time, but continuously, and the time has become ripe for them to be sacked. So let's look at it in real sense. The scope of HRM begins with employee hiring, and in employee hiring, we are interested in recruitment and selection. In our third lecture, we will actually treat recruitment and selection into rich details. And by the end of that lecture, I don't expect students to be using them wrongly. So when we say recruitment, it is totally different from selection, and immediately recruitment ends, selection process begins. It also includes, so still on the scope of HRM, it includes compensation. And this is the reward system that are given to employees for their service to an organization. And these rewards may take the form of financial or non-financial, intrinsic or extrinsic. Then there is training and development. Training and development also are the various, if you like, refresher courses, orientation, indoctrination that are given to employees to ensure that they are in tune with current best practices and what is actually demanded by their community of practice, so that they will not be lagging behind. They will continue to be in good competition with their rivals. Performance management. So this encompasses certain performance standards for employees and measuring the performance of employees periodically to ascertain whether they are on the path towards achieving the standards or they are having some challenges. And if some challenges crop up, we introduce additional interventions to resolve it. So performance management is a system on its own, which tries to initiate schemes that can help employees succeed in the performance of their job. Health and safety. So the working environment is more or less the second home of most employees, which means that it has to be designed in a safe and healthy manner. And when I say design it in a healthy and safe manner, it's meant as, for instance, the seats and desk that you are going to use ergonomically, it has to be the proper one so that it does not leave you with some backaches. Depending on the task that you are performing to, the windows must also be designed in such a way that it is noise-proof, so that you are not bothered and confronted with noise that may be coming from the outside environment. And all these distractions can affect one's performance. In the same vein, work activities that demands the use of protective clothes or goggles must also be readily made available so that the employee does not get injured or soiled with some toxics that can be very much dangerous to their health. So that is health and safety. Then the issue of employee relations, which tries to look at the relationship that subsists between employers and employees. So it is actually three-way. Let me quickly connect my peripheral so that I can draw some of the things I'm saying. Employee relations. It is the sort of relationship that subsists between employers and their employees, employees and employers, even among the employers or among the employees. And in some instances, it can even involve state agencies. So government agencies such as the Labor Commission. Okay. My explanation on employee relations, is it clear, or do you want me to illustrate the connections that I was talking about? Hello, are you there? Speak to me.
Yes, sir.
It's clear.
No, sir.
So I should illustrate what I mean, right?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Okay, so just a minute. Okay, can you see my screen?
No, sir. No, sir.
Can you see it now?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And see, I was explaining employee relations, remember? And I said that it is a sort of relationship that subsists between employers and employees. So this relationship, no, it is one way of explaining employee relations. So anytime an attempt is made to analyze the relationship that exists between employers and employees, we can construe it as employee relations. But oftentimes it is more complex than this. So you can also have a situation where you are analyzing employers and their associations. Employers and their association, as well as employees and their union. That can also be construed as employee relations. And in the strict sense of it, there can also be other third parties that come in the midst of this relationship and serve as referees. So they are the ones that we construe as government agencies. So government agencies. And a typical example in Ghana here is the Labor Commission. So anytime we talk about employee relations, we are essentially referring to the sort of relationship that subsists between employers and their employees. Or it could be, because employers and their employees are top down. It could also be the reverse. It could be between employees and their employers. And if you are analyzing it within a single organization, that means their management. You can also look at it from the angle where the aggregates or the totality of employers association are also meeting the totality of employees association. So employees, we call it union. And this usually takes place when they are deliberating on maybe the conditions of service of the employees. The employees may be thinking maybe times are hard and so they cannot increase salary. Whereas the employees may be thinking that the economic conditions and inflationary issues is not making their current salary meet their needs. And for that matter, there is the need for a salary bump. So whenever aggregates of employers and aggregates of employees, so their unions, meet and interact in this manner too, we can construe it as what? Employee relations. And by extension, anytime there is this meeting between the employers and employees to deliberate on their conditions of service, it always ends up in a stalemate where each of the parties will have an entrenched position. So whereas the employers will be saying that they may not be able to afford some of the percentage-wise increments, the employees will also be saying that, well, we also need it to survive. Other than that, we can't work for you any longer. So we will go on strike. So when some of these conflicts crop up, then there is the need for a referee to come in to help mediate it. And usually it is the government agencies that is statutorily mandated to reconcile some of these differences. And in Ghana, we call it the labor, the Labor Commission. Okay, I don't know if you can see it well. So what you see over here is Labor Commission. Into all these interactions, and then your friend employee relations. Please, is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
Good, good.
Yes, sir.
So let's make progress with what I was saying. So I was on this particular slide, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
I was explaining the scope of HRM. And you can all see it.
I can see it, sir.
Good, good. Okay, so I am done with the scope of HRM. Now let's look at the objectives of HRM. The basic objective of human resource management is to contribute to the realization of organizational goals by providing competent and motivated employees. So every HR department's cardinal goal in an organization is to ensure that at any point in time, the organization have in place individuals with requisite knowledge, skills, abilities, and attitude that can help the organization to achieve its set goals. Okay, now this particular statement over here can further be broken down to its specific ones. So this is more or less like a general objective that the HRM seeks to achieve, but it can be broken down to several ones. And this includes 1, to ensure effective utilization of human resources. All other organizational resources will be efficiently utilized by human resources. When we say HRM ensures effective utilization of human resources, it means that it strives to assign core responsibilities and targets to every member of the organization, so that when everyone is able to achieve their respective targets and we put them together, the organization can say to be what? Making progress. And this will also mean that we are paying people for their contribution to organizational success. Is it clear? Now, this also means that there is the need for, before you can utilize someone effectively, it means when you are recruiting and selecting them, you have to pick the ones that match the job. You shouldn't be picking people because they are your friends or maybe because they are family members. You should rather be picking people because they have demonstrable qualities that suggest they will be successful on the job. And in that regard, once they come onto the job, they will become vital assets that can be utilized. The second one is to establish and maintain an adequate organizational structure of relationship among all members of an organization by dividing the organization's tasks into functions, positions, and jobs. So essentially, what this seeks to do is that HRM strives to design the structure of an organization to bring some sort of logical relationship within it, so that everyone will know their locus in the company. Everyone will know who they report to. Everyone will also know what they are expected to do at any point in time. And by designing the work in a logical manner, every department can also strive and help in the attainment of the corporate objectives. So marketing department will know what is expected of them. Accounting and finance will know what is expected of them. Operations will know what is expected of them. What again? The PR departments, the procurement, and so on and so forth. And having done this structuring, you assign responsibilities, core responsibilities to each of these departments. And within the departments too, the HR ensures that every individual has a job description that will bring clarity on what they are expected to do at any point in time. And when it comes to performance appraisal, it is these responsibilities that they are going to account for. So once HR does all these things in terms of organizational structuring and design, then it makes the work of everyone pretty much simple in there. Now, another specific objective of HRM is to generate maximum development of human resources within the organization by offering opportunity for advancement to employees through training and development. And you will all agree with me that the world, as we see it now, is fast changing. Previously, most of the things that we do in our offices now were done manually. The file system, for instance. And these days, best practice recommends that we use a new way of, for instance, filing, which can even be done computerized. And all this knowledge can be gained when you have a robust training and education, or if you like, training and development departments in your organization. This is because it is the sole responsibility of these departments to be scanning around to see some of these emerging best practices and bringing on board resource persons that can train the employees to adopt these new ways of doing things, so that over time, the organization will not be lagging behind. And don't forget too, organizations are always competing among themselves. So if there is a new way of doing things that can give you an edge over your competitors, the training and development components or aspect of HRM will ensure that your employees are constantly resourced with cutting edge knowledge. Then Another specific objective is to ensure respect for human beings by providing various services and welfare facilities to the personnel. So when we say you are ensuring respect for human beings, it essentially means that you are providing courtesies through some form of services. So issues that borders on welfare and well-being of employees are catered for by the HR department. So for instance, if someone is bereaved and for that matter, would need some days off in order to mourn the dead, all these paperwork or processing will be done by the HR department. If someone is someone experiences a casualty or an accident on the job, and there is the need for some compensation to be provided to make amends for it, it's all be catered for by the HR department. To ensure reconciliation of individual group goals with those of the organization in such a manner that the personnel feels a sense of commitment and loyalty towards it. I will say, if we allow everyone in a company to pursue their own goal, which is not consistent or which deviates from the ultimate one that the company wants to achieve, then it will be more or less like not running a company, because everyone will be doing whatever pleases them. So to bring sanity to the task execution of employees, the HR department ensures that whatever goal an individual wants to pursue is actually recalibrated so that it can fit well into the ultimate one of the organization. And they does this through counseling, career counseling. So maybe you entered the company with a background in accounting, okay? The counseling department can coach you that if you really want to progress in your career ladder very fast, then in addition to your degree certificate, it is important you learn some accounting softwares such as Tally and so on and so forth. You also try to join accounting professional bodies, okay? Instead of maybe venturing into other careers which may thwart your progress in the company. And don't forget, once an individual is distracted and venturing into other areas that is not in sync with the company's ultimate strategy, it will be retarding the progress of the company. Okay, so HR does some of these corrections. Identify and satisfy the needs of individuals by offering various monetary and non-monetary rewards. So compensation and benefit administration. When employees work, deliver services to a company, it is also expected that they are paid their salary when it is due, and beyond even the salary, they are also given some sort of non-financial rewards in terms of their benefits. Okay. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? All right, let's make progress. So the importance of HRM. Now let me tell you a trick. All the things that I discussed under the initially, so we were discussing the objectives of HRM. You can turn them around and present it as the importance of HRM. So maybe in exams, when you are asked to explain two importance or relevance of HRM. But the one you chose was the objectives. You can still turn them around and it will make sense. When we say an objective of a department, it means something that it stands to achieve. And this same objective can be turned around to become why that department is relevant. So if we say it helps in the creation of safe and healthy work environment. In fact, it's the same as what's your scope, organogram now, the organogram I projected. It's the same thing that we are repeating over here. It supplies skilled workers through scientific selection process. So this means that we are talking about recruitment and what? Selection. The HR department ensures that the company at any point in time is able to hire people that are qualified and competent for the job. That is what this second point seeks to say. Then the third one is it ensures to aid that the employees get what is due them as far as compensation and benefit is concerned. And that was, I think, the last objective that I presented. So HR department makes sure that everyone who is serving in a company is accorded a substantial reward for their service. It prepares workers according to changing needs of industry and environment. Who can tell me what this stands for? Which objective this one will stand for? When we say it prepares workers according to the changing needs of industry and environment. The fourth point. When we say HR prepares workers according to the changing needs of industry and environment, what sort of objective is it trying to achieve? And I say, which of the scopes will it fall in? Yes, Ernest. Ernest Sampana.
So please, the understanding I have, yes, sir.
Go on.
The understanding I have for this particular one is, in the course of time, times changes, the scope of work changes. So the HR prepares everyone so that if the environment changes, probably in some health industry at the moment, they are using some softwares here and there.
Good.
So if the environment changes with regards to the job that you are doing, the HR prepares you ahead so that you fit into that, so that the organization will not be lacking.
Good.
Behind. So they give trainings ahead so that if the environment changes with regards to the work, you are.
No. I feel no one can say no. Now we can say but the thing is training and development. That is what I'm looking for. Thank you very much. The name is what? Sampana. Thank you very much. So for today, Sampana has 1 mark. Let me record it for you. Are you in Takoradi campus?
Yes, sir.
What is your full name? NS Sampana. Let me check.
NS Sampana.
NS. I've seen you. Good. So today you have 1 mark.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, now just let me know if you are also ready to contribute to class so that you earn your other half of the mark. At least for the attendance, I will mark and everyone will get 0.5, but you have to contribute to get the remaining 0.5. Now, HR also motivates workers and upgrade them so as to enable them accomplish organizational goals. And when we say they motivate workers and upgrade them, it can still be tied to the T&D aspects, because some of the training programs that we organize in companies for employees, you really need to convince them that it is tied to their career progression, so that by attending some of these seminars and acquiring knowledge, when the time is due for them to progress in their career ladder, then they will go through smoothly. And this will also furnish them with an additional knowledge from what they previously had. So that is where the upgrade will come. And when it becomes necessary for them to use new sophisticated tools that are now endorsed in their community of practice, then they will not be found wanting. Now, through innovation and experimentation in the fields of personnel, it helps in reducing costs and helps in increasing productivity. Look at the point very well. Through innovation and experimentation in the fields of personnel, it helps in reducing costs and helps in increasing productivity. Someone's microphone is on. Junior, do you want to make a contribution? Now, you are all reminded to change your profile names to the name you have on your ID card, so that when I'm marking the register, I can reconcile your name here with that of the one which is before me, okay? So I don't want to be seeing iPhone 9, junior, senior, and so on and so forth. Okay, through innovation and experimentation in the fields of personnel, it helps in reducing costs and helps in increasing productivity. So when we say HR conducts some form of experimentation and adopts innovation to reduce costs, it can be likened to what we call job redesigning. Job redesigning. Now, what this means is that if, for instance, a job is currently being performed by 2 people, but over time, each of these individuals have mastered it in such a way that by the time we are through half of the day, they have nothing to do. It means that we will be wasting precious time. Okay, we will be wasting precious time. When some of these evidence are gathered through the experimentations and observations, it demands that we introduce additional HR interventions, such as job enlargement. Job enlargement. And what this job enlargement essentially means is that you increase the responsibility of the person from the previous one. So assuming previously the target of the person was to produce 10 bottles of water a day. The person shows up at work 8 a.m. and the person closes at 5. And the target is produce 10 bottles. But you realize that by 12, then they are already through the work. This means that maybe the initial job analysis that was done to prescribe that the target for the day is supposed to be 10 boxes is outdated and it needs to be revised. So by job enlargement, you will sit down with the employee and discuss that based on the experience that they have now, we are going to increase our expectations from them in terms of their output. And this will also go a long way to enhance the productivity of the company, because if the person is able to double their output, then productivity will also go up. And that means that when you are increasing their wages or salaries to compensate for some of these enlargements, there will be no challenges. Another strategy that can also be used to innovatively address some of these issues when we realize there are redundancy in the system. It's what we call job rotation. And job rotation essentially means that maybe after 5 hours, you realize the person is idle and not doing anything. You can assign the person to a department where their services and their knowledge can be tapped. So that is job rotation. So that is what the 6 points essentially seeks to communicate. HR also contributes a lot in restoring the industrial harmony and healthy employer-employee relations. So 7th one, which of the scopes will it fall under? The 7th one, which of the scopes will it fall under and why? Hello, are you there? I'm saying that HR contributes a lot in restoring industrial harmony. So which of the scopes or functions of HRM will it fall under? Hey, Mr. Max, no, none of you want it. Okay, in cancer, Christopher. I think I can see Yebua, Emmanuel Yebua, go on.
Health and safety.
Health and safety, no. Let me call another person. I saw another hand. Who else wants to try apart from Sampana? Okay, Amache.
Employees relation.
Employees relation, employer-employee relation. And the cry is there, is in it. So why are you struggling to understand it? It is before you. So anytime HR strives to restore industrial harmony, we are talking about employee relations. Okay, so Amache, your full name is what? Amache,
Sir.
come again. Amache. Check here. You said your full name is what? Emmanuel Amache. Abraham. Okay, Abraham, I've seen it. Good. So Amache 2 has 1 full mark for the day. So far, the rest you have just 0.5.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Evelyn Emisa. Evelyn Emisa, or we should make progress. Evelyn, I can see your hand up. Is there a question? Or you wanted to contribute? Okay, so let's make progress. Now, the challenges of HRM. Challenges that the field of HRM faces. The challenges can be discussed under a lot of thematic areas.
Employee benefit or compensation.
What did you say? Evelyn, I'm listening. Oh, I think she's having network challenges. So let's make progress. The challenges that confront the field of HRM can be discussed under several teams. In fact, if you start reading the book by Armstrong or Torrington, you'll be coming across a lot of things so that you come and teach me. But for the purpose of today's class, and because it's an introductory lecture, we will be discussing them under these themes: economic and technological challenges, workforce availability and quality concerns, demographics and diversity issues, organizational restructuring, economic, and so you find one by one, economic and technological challenges. So several economic challenges have occurred that have altered employment and occupational patterns. So, and some of these changes, they immediately crop up. They transition how things are usually done. So if you take the transitioning that is currently occurring in the transformation of agriculture industry into a manufacturing sector, from the agriculture and manufacturing to service sector, as well as the telecommunications sector. This means that if you look at the percentage of companies that are now going into agri or the manufacturing, and you compare it to companies that are now going into service industry or maybe telecommunication all over the world, you will realize that majority of them are interested in service and technology than manufacturing and agriculture. And this is particularly true because the discovery of internet and technological advancements, which is now occurring across the globe, means that any venture that you want to start, you must be thinking of how you will integrate it with what? Technology. So that if you are not ready to do that, then you will struggle to survive. So these shifts means that some organizations will have to reduce the number of employees, whilst others will have to attract and retain individuals with distinctive capabilities. From the part where they will have to reduce the number of employees. These days, if you go to some of the banks that we have around us now have self-serving machines. I'm not talking about the ATM. In fact, they have a system in place where you can even deposit money without coming into contact with an individual or an employee of the company. And this means that the technology will be getting rid of what? The employee. In fact, if you go to most parts of the developed world, you realize that when you go to a filling station, there wouldn't be an individual there to serve you. Everything is technology driven, which means that if some of these technologies are introduced in Ghana, then we will be laying off a lot of workers. In fact, as I speak with you, there are some banks in US and Europe where prior to even COVID-19, when you enter their premises, no one will be visibly there to attend to you, but everything is automated. So if you have a complaint, you can sit in your house, issue it, and someone will pick it and work on it. And once maybe if you are going for your ID card, when it is, your ATM card, when it is ready, you either pick it at their premises or it will be posted to you. So some of these service-driven innovations that are coming up means that the HR department will have to take a bold decision to right size or reduce the number of employees that are currently working in there, because you don't want to have so many hands or idle hands that are receiving salary. At the end of the day, it will not make any rational or financial sense. In the same vein, the need to attract and retain employees with different capabilities. And when I say different, I'm talking about those with distinctive capabilities than which were previously needed is also an issue that is confronting this transitioning I'm talking about. So those from the agricultural and manufacturing ones, those sectors were driven more by the use of physical strength. To survive in the manufacturing industry, you should be someone who is physically fit and mentally sound. The same can be said about the agricultural sector. But in the service sector, it is driven by intelligence. You have to be mentally strong. So it is not about how you muscularly look or you physically look. This means that if previously people were hired because of their stature, but the current world of work or the current operations in the organization demands that we need people that are very, very intelligent, conscientious, and so on and so forth, then very soon those people, the system will take care of them. You'll be losing them. In the same vein, if the universities are also not churning out candidates that have the qualities that you need in terms of surviving in this service industry, which now employs over 60% of the workforce in most of the employers' landscape, then it means we are in for trouble. Now, let's also look at the economic side. Other factors like inflation, cost of living, may keep on soaring high, whereas wages and salaries of the general workforce remain unchanged. And when some of these challenges keep cropping up, it will mean that the relationship that exists between management and employees will soil, because management will also be complaining that, hey, this inflation, we are also buying things at an expensive or an exorbitant fee. And so we cannot increase your wages and salaries. Whereas employees will also be complaining that the salary that you are giving me is too meager. It can't even take care of my TNT, let alone other living expenses. And so it will breed a lot of challenge for the HR department to handle, but they still need to navigate around it. So that is it about the economic and technological change. Now, workforce availability and quality concerns. Workforce availability and quality concerns. In many parts of the world today, significant workforce shortages exist due to an inadequate supply of workers with skills needed to perform the jobs being added. So let's take Ghana as an example. You realize that most Ghanaians that get the nod to work in the oil and gas industry, and particularly the extractive industry, they tend to have a background which confines them more to the office and clerical jobs. So the individuals may be having a certificate in oil and gas management, a certificate in maybe business administration, a certificate in HR, where it can be used to play a role over there. But when it comes to the availability of Ghanaians that may be skilled to do the various carry out the various exploratory activities to even search for the oil and eventually manage the machinery that are used in drilling the oil and so on and so forth, you realize that there will be no time to even train the workforce we have in Ghana. And so they often fall short and fall on foreign experts. So they may have to bring people from abroad to come and do those kind of jobs. Because you have found gold and you want to, in fact, look at the time gold was discovered at our shores. As we speak, we don't even have the technology to refine it. And even when we set up some of these technology, when foreign companies come and set them up and the time is right for us to refine it, you realize that most of the strategic activities will be performed by experts. And this is particularly a challenge that confronts the HR department that man some of these establishments, because in their own view, giving the nod to a Ghanaian to do it wouldn't be bad. But when you check the background of the applicants, you realize that they do not have what it takes to do. So to bridge some of these gaps and address some of these things, it is necessary that some individuals in the companies that have interest in some of these technical areas are invited and then given the training either on the job or off the job, so that when these experts leave, they can also take over. So that is how workforce availability and diversity can be a challenge. Now, demographic and diversity issues. Okay, so workforce in every organization over the past few decades has dramatically changed. It has become more racially diverse. So if you are thinking about those working in multinational enterprises, it has become more racially diverse, but in the context of Ghana, it has become more ethnically diverse, so that you can have more than one ethnic group working within it. Now, once you have people with different cultural and ethnic backgrounds, or if you like, other demographic background working together, there is the need for us to sensitize them on why it is important to be culturally sensitive and receptive. So being sensitive and receptive to other cultures means that we have to tone down on issues like ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the cultural attitude marked by the belief that an individual's way of doing things, particularly orienting from their ethnic line, is superior to that of other ethnic lines. So that maybe others will say, the way we manage business, or if we set up a business with only Ewe people in it, then we will be able to achieve superior targets than if we mix it with Akans and other ethnic groups in Ghana, and so on and so forth. So it is important for the HR department to be constantly sensitizing and educating its workforce to be very much receptive, accommodative of some of these divergent views which individuals may be projecting from their ethnic orientations. Now, it is also important that if you take a demographic variable such as age, it is important that at any point in time in the organization, we have a right blend of the aged who are usually more experienced in conducting the business with the young ones, the young folks that may now be coming from university and very much energized or poised, who want things to be done in a particular way. So once you get a blend of these two in an organization, you realize that as the aged folks retire, they will be passing down their knowledge to the newer generation for them to also keep the business in line. And without having in place such good transitioning exercise, you realize people will be retiring with their experience, whilst people will come in perhaps without the requisite maturity to handle certain portfolios. The same can be said about gender. Having the right blend of the genders and not necessarily discriminating towards a particular gender sect is also particularly important, because these days we say what a man can do, a woman can do it better. And so it is important for an organization to have an orientation that, irrespective of one's gender, if you have what it takes to deliver, you'll be given the opportunity to serve. Okay, and all these things are issues that still the HR department struggles with, particularly in geographical jurisdictions where the culture frowns upon giving opportunity to, for instance, women to occupy higher positions. So if you go to the Middle East, for instance, the Middle East, it will be very difficult for them to accept a woman as a CEO, because culturally, they go by the patriarchal system. And patriarchal system means that at any point in time, it is a man that is expected to lead. So if you are an HR managing a multinational enterprise in such an environment, but you have come across a woman who is superior in terms of the knowledge, skills, and abilities than men, the cultural environment will still be what? Constraining you to do what is right. Okay. So restructuring issues, I think I explained it earlier on. Because of the emergence of technology and the need to always get people busy on the job by reducing idle time, most organizations are going through what we call restructuring. Restructuring essentially means they are trying to right size by either eliminating some layers which are not necessary. So if you look at some organograms, Ubeho said they don't have the levels of management, they don't have 3 levels of management. Okay, ideally, there is supposed to be 3 levels of management: top level, middle level, and lower levels of management. But if it is not making financial sense to your company, you may decide to collapse some of the levels of management and practice something which is more what? Pragmatic to your situation. In the same vein, some companies are closing down some facilities which are underperforming and concentrating on the ones that are fetching them money. And when some of these issues, okay, it means that you will either be transferring this affected workforce to facilities where their skills are needed, and the ones that are redundant may have to be laid off. And handling some of these things is not an easy venture, because you are dealing with the bread and butter issues. Other companies also engage in mergers and acquisition, and one of these mergers occurs. There is a higher tendency that people's jobs may be lost. So the recent cleanup exercise which happened in the banking sector of Ghana, for instance, 5 banks had to be merged to generate what we now have as Consolidated Bank of Ghana. And in the course of going through, some of the discoveries were that there were a lot of people that had been initially hired, but that were not actually contributing to the success of their banks. In other words, they were hired not on the basis of merit. So all those individuals got affected. And at the end of the day, those that actually emerged as relevant for the banking industry were kept. The same can be said about the Airtel-Tigo merger that took place. Afterwards, you see, when the merger occurred, some people also lost their jobs. And in dealing with these retrenchment issues, it is the HR department that plays a pivotal role. So, how to restructure an organization to resolve some of these issues after mergers, after removing some layers in the organogram, and also after closing facilities down, is a challenge that confronts the Department of HRM, which they navigate through on a daily basis. Okay, so that will be all for today. Any questions so far? Any question? Any question? Abednego, or say?
Yeah, sir, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Is it morning or
Yeah.
afternoon?
It's afternoon, 12.
Hey, it's afternoon. Hey, I thought I had spoken for just 30 minutes. I see. Okay, I better now go on.
My own is not a question, but I just joined. Since morning, we're having issue with our network since morning. So yes, got network, and I saw that.
The class
now
was going on.
Sure. So,
So
I've
don't
seen-
worry. So I am recording everything. In fact, all that I'm saying, right, to be captured. Let me stop the recording. Right after class, you will get